Greetings and welcome to my channel, Take Control of Your Health. I'm Dr. Corey Stern. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you so much for listening. When you have a few minutes, please take a look back at some of my earlier videos. All of the information that is contained in them is something that I think is really important for taking control of your health, and I'm trying to actually paint a bigger picture, give you a complete amount of information for you to be able to improve your health. And if you're coming back and you've been listening, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of your comments and feedback. And if you have not had a chance to hit the subscribe button, I would love if you would do that, simply because that is my actually only reward for doing this is seeing that I'm helping a growing number of people and making some kind of impact, because that is actually my only agenda. I am not doing this for any other reason. I do not want to be monetized. I don't have a need to make any money doing this. I have a really successful business helping people with nutrition and chiropractic. I help thousands and thousands of people, and even though I don't charge very much, I'm happy with the living that I'm making doing it. I think it's an amazing thing to be able to make a living restoring people's health and saving lives. And I also travel around the country teaching other doctors about how to help patients with nutrition. So I'm perfectly happy with that, and this is just a hobby for me. It's more like a passion, a mission, a purpose. I don't have any desire to make money doing this. So for those of you that have suggested that I should try to sell something or sell services on here, it's just not something that I feel in my heart to do right now. If I change my mind, I will, but right now, not interested. What I really want to do, though, is see my subscribers growing, because that's really what makes me happy. Yeah, it's probably an addiction just watching the number of subscribers going up. I'll admit it. Okay. So on our last video, we talked about stress, and particularly the relationship of minerals or mineral deficiency to stress, and how a mineral deficiency can make it more difficult for your body and your mind to be able to deal with and handle stress adequately, and how stress actually causes your body to need more minerals. And if you're not getting enough minerals, then you're becoming mineral deficient, which leads to a vicious cycle and just makes it more and more difficult, and you become more and more symptomatic. Today I'd like to talk about the relationship between fat and stress, and then I would like to expand on fat in general as an essential nutrient, because fat has been given a very bad reputation in this country, and a lot of people have so much misinformation about it. And my question is, why is that? Why does fat have such a bad reputation? Who is telling us that fat is bad? Or let's say misguiding us about what fats are good and what fats are not good. Is it the bad guys who are trying to make us sicker, weaker, and stupider? Could it be them? Perhaps. So let's see if we can give you some real information. And I just want to start out with a story about a patient of mine. This was many years ago. A woman who was in her 40s, and she had been working for a cardiologist for 20 years, and the cardiologist was telling her constantly, fat is bad for your heart, don't eat fat, be careful, have a low-fat diet, these fats are good, these fats are not good, don't eat these fats, eat these fats. And she followed exactly what he said because she respected and trusted him. Now, 20 years of following that advice, and she woke up one day and couldn't see. She could not see. She had lost her vision. And she went to medical doctors, and they could not figure out what was wrong and what was causing the loss of vision. And somehow they had this bright idea of injecting her with Botox, so they injected her around her eyes. They did discover that her eyes were extremely dry. She wasn't producing tears. So I don't know what the Botox exactly was supposed to do. I can't explain that part. But they injected her with Botox, and the Botox actually caused her face to become fully paralyzed. So Botox does cause paralysis. That's what it does. But in her case, and I've seen this happen with others as well, her entire face was paralyzed. She could not speak, she couldn't move her mouth, and she couldn't chew. So she had to go on to a pureed diet. So now here she is, blind, can't speak, can't eat. And obviously she was very unhappy, and no medical doctor was able to help her figure out what to do for her. And guess what the next thing was that they decided to do? Put her on antidepressants, because that is something that I see very, very frequently with many of my patients that come to see me, and they're desperate because they have something going on in their body, and no medical doctors can figure out what's wrong with them. So they basically say, all right, well, it must be you. You're crazy. Let's put you on an antidepressant or an antipsychotic or an anti-anxiety. That actually happened to me, which I talk about in my very first video. So they put her on antidepressants, and this poor woman suffered one of the worst side effects that you can have from antidepressants, and it's called tardive dyskinesia, which is uncontrolled movement, unwanted movement. And so somehow she was referred to me, I don't remember how, and her brother brought her in. She came from far away, and so here sitting in front of me is this woman who is blind, cannot speak, and has uncontrolled movement. She was writhing in her chair. So before I heard the story, I thought she was a special needs person. I didn't know what was going on, and then her brother told me this whole story. And right away I knew, I just instinctively knew, but also from my clinical training and experience, that she had a severe fat deficiency. Your eyes need fat to work. So we got her started on a program, and we started feeding her fats, both in her pureed diet as well as some supplements, and her vision was restored in 3 weeks, fully restored. Now that was wonderful. It took a lot longer for the effects of the Botox to wear off. She did come off the antidepressant, and thank goodness the tardive dyskinesia did go away. But that is an illustration of how very important fat is in your diet. So there is a relationship between fat and mental health as well, because a lot of your brain is made out of fat. So when you have fat deficiencies, your brain is not going to work properly, and that can cause symptoms such as depression and anxiety, insomnia, and other stress-related symptoms. And then it can also cause cognitive deficit, so memory loss, or even lead eventually to dementia. So we can see that, like minerals, fat is an essential nutrient for handling stress. And there are many, many studies that show that fats, particularly omega-3 fatty acids found in fish oil, and they're broken down into two main components, EPA and DHA, and I'm not going to tell you what those letters stand for because they're really long words, but EPA and DHA. EPA seems to be helpful with depression, and DHA seems to be helpful with anxiety. EPA kind of uplifts the nervous system, and DHA kind of relaxes it. There's a lot of, I guess I would say, confusing studies out there. So if you go and start Googling it or DuckDuckGoing it and looking this up, you'll see studies that show there's no conclusive evidence that omega-3s help with depression and anxiety, and then you'll see the opposite, how helpful they are. So we do use omega-3 fatty acids in my practice for people that are suffering symptoms of stress, anxiety, depression, insomnia, and so forth. And basically, if you are deficient in fat, you will have unwanted symptoms. So I want to go over with you the other things that fat does in your body. Number one, every single cell membrane in your body has fat on it. So cell membrane, a membrane is like a covering of the cell. So right then and there, I mean, we're saying every single cell in your body requires fat. And we already mentioned vision. I am reading off a list. I made notes here, so that's why I'm looking down at your nervous system, your brain function. Fat is also important for your immune response. People really never think about that. Well, I'm not feeling good and cutting down with something. Maybe I should have some fat. Who thinks that? But I do. I do. Your inflammatory response. Fat is very active in your inflammatory response. It also has something to do with your genetic expression. So your DNA requires fat. Your metabolism and your energy, and fat is a really good energy source. It also regulates hormone production and mood, and it helps with mineral absorption, right? So I think of fat as like a vehicle, like a train, and the minerals get on the fat train, and the fat transports the minerals to where they need to go. All right, so the clinical signs of fat deficiency can include, first, you might see a dry, scaly rash on your skin, and with children, decreased or slowed down growth, children and infants. And you might have an increased susceptibility to infection and poor wound healing, vision issues, cognitive and memory issues, even heart problems. So yes, your heart does need fat. And then depression, anxiety, and other mood disorders. Now, in order to digest fat, you need to have certain enzymes being produced by your body, basically enzymes that are produced by the pancreas. It's called pancreatic enzymes. Your pancreas is the organ that also produces insulin. So one side of your pancreas makes insulin, the other side produces pancreatic enzymes that help you to digest fat. And the other thing that you need to digest and absorb fat is bile. So it's called bile salts. Bile is produced in your liver, and it is then secreted from your liver into your gallbladder, which sits right next to your liver. They're connected. And your gallbladder is like a little holder that has bile in it. And when you eat food with fat in it, the gallbladder secretes bile. So the bile and the pancreatic enzymes together help to break down the fat into small enough particles so that your digestive tract, your intestines, can absorb it. So if anything goes wrong in either of those areas, if your liver is not very happy and it's not producing enough bile or good quality bile, or your gallbladder is not happy, or it's inflamed, or it's clogged up with gallstones, or just sludgy bile, then you're not getting enough bile into your intestinal tract to fully absorb fat. And then if you don't have a gallbladder, sometimes your ability to absorb fat is compromised. And gallbladder is a very common organ to be removed from the body. And then if your pancreas is inflamed or not working well or otherwise compromised, then you also may not be fully absorbing fat. And that can lead to some of the symptoms that we just mentioned and others as well. For example, fat slows down your absorption of sugar. So if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates or sugars and you're not eating enough fat, or you're not able to absorb fat, chances are your blood sugar is going to be elevated. So for that reason, it is important for people with blood sugar handling problems like diabetics, pre-diabetics, hypoglycemics, and so forth to be able to eat and digest fat. So I want to talk about the difference between good and bad fat, because that's what's so confusing to people. I'm just going to give you a list of what we consider good fats, and then we'll talk about bad fats and why they're bad. So good fats, butter is like the perfect fat. It has a good combination of all different types of fats. And by the way, fat is made of different types of fats. There are essential fatty acids that means that your body can't make them. that you actually have to eat them, and then there are some fats that your body can produce, but you still need to give your body the stuff that it needs to make the fat. So butter is like a perfect fat. And when we talk about butter, the best kind of butter is grass-fed and preferably raw, which means not pasteurized. Raw butter is an extremely nutrient-dense food. Now, we will cover raw versus pasteurized dairy in another video because that's a whole big topic, and I can't get into the details now, or this video will be too long. Egg yolks contain very good fat, and again, if you're going to be eating eggs, make sure that they're good quality eggs. So happy chickens lay happy eggs, and happy chickens are chickens that are pasture raised, eating off the ground, eating insects, and free. Coconut oil, and when we're talking about coconut oil and palm oil, we're talking about, of course, make sure it's organic, that it's unadulterated, not processed. So coconut and palm oil. Olive oil, particularly when you eat it cold, like on salads, it's not a really good high heat oil. Butter is. Butter and ghee are good high heat oils, as are coconut oil and palm oil. Those are good for high heat. And avocado oil is good for medium heat. Olive oil, not so much. It doesn't have a high smoke point. So the molecular structure changes when you heat it a lot. And then sesame seed oil in small amounts only if it's cold pressed. So expeller pressed or cold pressed oils, when they're liquid, it's very important. I'll tell you why in a few minutes. And then any kind of grass-fed dairy, cream, and whole milk. Those fats are actually very nutrient dense, again, better raw. And cod liver oil is a good quality oil, very high in vitamin A and D. Nuts and seeds, try to get fresh nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds get rancid very easily, so preferably in the shell and organic. And then avocado, as we mentioned, avocado and avocado oil are good fats. And then also animal fats. Okay, so animal fats have nutrients in them that the vegetable-based or nut-based fats don't have. And we've been told that animal fats are bad, but animal fats from good quality animals, grass-fed or animals that are fed what they're supposed to eat and well taken care of, produce very nutrient-dense fats that are really good for you. Now, if you are a vegan and you're choosing not to eat animal fat, that is a choice that you make. There are some tribes in Africa that are more plant-based. They have more plant-based diets. But those tribes actually do eat things like insects, and usually they'll have whole small fish and shrimp paste. So they end up getting the fat or the components of the fats that they need that they're not getting in the plants. So just wanted to put that out there. I don't want to have arguments with anybody about vegan versus carnivore. That's not my purpose here. You have to eat the diet that's best for you. Some people, I guess, do okay on a vegan diet. Other people do not. So I follow it's called the Wise Tradition diet. I can give you a link to it. And it's based on traditional diets of, let's say, tribal peoples all over the world, and what the most of the human population was eating before there was processed foods. So I want to tell you why bad fats are bad, and basically bad fats are anything that's man-made. So things like margarine and shortening, and then a whole bunch of vegetable oils made out of, mostly made out of seeds. So I just want to read to you something about how they're made, because it's kind of disgusting and shocking. So manufacturers begin with the cheapest seeds they can find, and some of those seeds are cottonseed, soy, canola, sunflower, safflower, grapeseed, corn, I think I said that, soybean, and rice bran. And they extract the oil at extremely high temperatures and pressures. And then they pour in a very harmful solvent called hexane, which is carcinogenic. And then the oils turn brown and they become smelly. So in order to get the smell out, they undergo steaming process to clean them. And this destroys any nutrients that might have been in them, and only the harmful solvents and then the pesticides that were sprayed on the crops are left behind. So they're kind of disgusting and really, really bad for you. The first oils were like that were made by Procter & Gamble in the 1800s. And of course, they use very clever marketing strategies to hoodwink the public into believing that these fats were much better for you than the fats that people have used for millennia, like butter and lard and tallow, and coconut oil. And they convinced people that they should use these types of oils for cooking and salad dressing. And then they created Crisco. Crisco actually stands for crystallized cottonseed oil. The first type of man-made oil like this was cottonseed, which basically is waste. It was waste from the cotton industry. So they had this really, really cheap seed that they could make a ton of money on, and then they started to use those other seeds, corn and soybean and sunflower and safflower and canola, which is actually rapeseed, and rice bran. And they actually act like toxins in the body. They accumulate in our fat. They disrupt our fertility. They increase feelings of hunger because they are not actually giving us nutrients. They hamper your body's ability to utilize stored energy. They cause inflammation and contribute to chronic disease. So these are oils that it's really important to avoid and stay away from. So there's a lot more that we can go into about fat. I actually love the topic of fat. I'm really fascinated by it. How much fat you should eat is really individual. So a lot of people ask me questions about, what's the best diet for you? How much of this should I eat? How much of that should I eat? It really, really varies from individual to individual, and that's why I can't really give you one answer. I can't say, this is the best diet, you should do this. This is the amount of fat you should eat. In traditional societies that were untouched by processed food, they were eating anywhere from 30% to 80% of their total calories were fat. So some of it depends on your ethnicity, it depends on your ability to actually produce good quality bile and your pancreatic enzymes, what you can actually absorb and handle, because if your bile's not that good, eating a high-fat diet might make you feel nauseated or give you loose stool or diarrhea. So you can't say, you got to try it for yourself. Just, make sure you're getting good quality fats in your diet and see what makes you feel good. That's a good way of knowing. So I hope this information was helpful, and I will be returning next week with some more important information on fat and other nutrients. And maybe next week we'll actually talk about protein and amino acids. I've gotten some requests to talk about that. So until then, stay healthy. Thank you.